Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Glazov gang. I'm not Jamie Glazov. I'm Josh Brewster filling in. And tonight we're going to have a very special telecast. You know Dwight Schultz from the Glazov gang every week. And of course, you know him from the A-Team and from Star Trek Voyager and also from Fat Man and Little Boy and hundreds of voices that he's done, et cetera, et cetera. But we've never really taken a moment to talk about Dwight and his life. He's a successful actor, and I think that it's time to talk about Dwight's life and work and his views and who he is as a conservative and in general. Dwight, thanks for joining me on the show tonight.
I'm very humbled to be here. I truly am.
All right. Dwight, why don't we do this? Glazov gang, we always start off with a couple news items, so why don't we stay the course? We'll do a couple news items, and then we'll get into your story. The unions are saying we need to be prepared for civil war, Dwight. They're very angry. They're very angry in Michigan.
Blood.
There will be blood in Wisconsin and Michigan and all over the Great Lakes where the unions and the Democrats have flushed all the states down the toilet. But now, God forbid, we have right to work laws. What are your thoughts of this union thuggery, et cetera?
Well, I mean, Jimmy Hoffa Jr., just before one of the president's campaign speeches, said it. We're going to take these sons of bitches out. This is the technique of the thugocracy that we're in right now. Revenge. These are our enemies. You set state against state. You set the middle class, whoever they are, against the millionaires and billionaires and anybody who makes over $250,000 a year. You set brother against brother, sister against sister. You say you're going to take the former president of the United States and the vice president and perhaps try them. You're going to try members of the CIA. You're going to use power to come down on all of those who are opposed to you. And Harry Belafonte said maybe he should arrest everybody who disagrees with him. And that's really the philosophy that's behind it.
You scratch the veneer, and more of this far left stuff, this thuggery comes out. One thing that we were talking about before we started today, the comedian, activist Steven Crowder was roughed up. There were some other people roughed up.
Big time.
And it's interesting how this story is handled because as you mentioned to me, if this had happened at a Tea Party rally, this would be all over the place.
Well, they manufactured everything. They had a black guy who they refused to reveal that he was black with a gun on his back. And you know, they make up stories about the whole Tea Party when Nancy Pelosi, with that long walk when Obamacare was being voted on, and members of the Tea Party were supposedly spitting on black members of Congress and calling them using racial epithets. It was all fake and fraud. This is real.
Yeah.
So
and you know what, Dwight? As Andrew Breitbart pointed out, the late great Andrew Breitbart pointed out, you know, they'll take some fringe character at a Tea Party rally, and they'll use an image of him and conflate that to make everybody think this is what all the Tea Partiers are like. And I've always said, you know, if you went to an Al Sharpton rally, okay, there's going to be some fringe, left-wing, fringe, anti-Semite, racist guy. You wouldn't take that image and say, well, everybody who's listening to Sharpton obviously agrees with this. This is all nonsense. It all fits a narrative, and the narrative must be preserved, which is a Tea Party's a bunch of racist whites. And I mean, it's nonsense.
And they have the Democratic Party, which is now the Progressive Party. We shouldn't even call it.
That's right. No, you're right.
Has this great organ of information called mainstream media: NBC, ABC, CBS. CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and they now are, without question, lying in order to support a thug who's in the White House. And I have to use that word.
That's fine.
Because he's not going to come out. He's never going to come out and criticize what's going on because he's behind it.
Now, Dwight, let's talk about another news item that hit the air today. Only 15 states right now are opting to run Obamacare exchanges. Oh, here's a big surprise. Very briefly, because I want to get into your story, Dwight. Obamacare is coming. Only 15 states are opting in. They're going to probably tell the federal government, you go right ahead and run it. What do you think of this mess that I think is coming?
Well, something that we were just talking about again. 17 Democrats have written to the Obama administration begging them to postpone the implementation of a tax on medical devices. Now, it's just come to their attention that the businesses are going to be hammered, and there's not going to be this incentive to investigate improving medical devices for people's health. It's just and jobs are going to be lost. Yeah. It's just coming to their attention, yet most of us on the other side of the aisle have known this for a year. Why is that? That's because they don't think. This is all a pretty idea, a totalitarian idea, a utopian idea that is practically never going to be implemented correctly, and is going to the detriment of everyone. It was always an insurance. It was never about health. I always hated the idea that Republicans could not jump on that. It's not about health. It's not about doctors, because doctors are evil and they're rich. Yeah. They're part of the millionaires and billionaires, right?
Right.
They're hated
because they didn't build that.
This is all about the insurance. Yes, this is all about the insurance companies.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And again, when the penalty, I think Ron Johnson mentioned this, Senator mentioned this at a David Horowitz event. If the penalty is only like $3,000 to not insure someone. Right. Why would you pay $5,000 to insure someone? Just pay the penalty and throw them off. This will be big business's biggest friend. This kind of socialism, American socialism, will be big business's big friend. They will use the government to relieve them of providing health care.
Yes, it's one of the things about George. I mean, I love George Orwell, but he had always hoped that Americans would embrace socialism, the right kind of socialism. He was wrong about it when he was involved in the wars, and he found out that it really is fascism and totalitarianism, and he was wrong about the United States embracing it. It's a terrible, terrible mistake.
All right, Dwight Schultz, let's talk about your life as an actor. One thing, you come on the Glazov gang and you express views that I enjoy. I think a lot of people find our views politically incorrect. I don't care. Dwight, you grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, correct?
Right. That's correct.
And you're an only child.
Only child.
I too am an only child. And you obviously were acting at an early age. Can you just tell me the beginnings of your acting?
Yes, I sat in front of a television and wore a spot out away in front of the television, waiting for Red Ryder to appear on TV. And Red Ryder came in two flavors, Wild Bill Elliott and Rocky Lane. When Rocky Lane appeared, I cried and threw things at the TV, because the real Red Ryder was Wild Bill Elliott. I knew the difference, even though Robert Blake was Little Beaver in both, and is now a convicted murderer.
But he was good. He was a good actor. He was a good actor.
But at any rate, I've always wanted to be an actor, and it was through voices. I became entranced by other people and their voices. And I've always that still is the way I act today.
I remember as a young child, I remember doing all kinds of since I was an only child, I did a lot of characterizations around the house to kind of occupy myself. Did you find
same thing? Jonathan Winters, and I forced my parents to buy me a Webcore tape recorder, and I remember the first time that I heard my voice back, and I had a thick Baltimore accent. Oh my God! I'm telling you, hon, it was terrible. It was oh. And I heard that, and I got, that's not me! And it was.
Balmer.
Balmer, Maryland.
Balmer, Maryland.
Balmer, Maryland.
All right, very good.
Or Baltimore. You could say it both ways, hon.
Now, I want to jump ahead a little bit here, Dwight. You told me something that I found very interesting. You worked on a big early production of one of David Mamet's works, The Water Engine. Now, he had already come out, I think he had already had American Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken, at that time. Or no, was it that era?
It was that era, yeah, but The Water Engine was actually, it was one of his first plays, and was in Chicago. And Bill Macy played the part that I finally got, Charles Lang. It was the first job that I got through the audition process in New York. And I wasn't really supposed to get it. Bob Balaban was supposed to get it, but he did this little film called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And so it came to me. And 3 minutes after they told me I was cast, I walked out of the Public Theater and my disc ruptured. And I had no money. I was broke. And I walked 2 miles to my apartment that I shared on 15th Street, where I felt my leg going numb. And I lost nerve innervation to my calf, and I lost my ankle reflex.
Nice.
And yes, it was one of those extraordinary things. And I walked along walls, literally. And when I got to my apartment, I called someone who's a very famous actress now, whose father was a famous physician in the West. And he called Flower and Fifth Avenue Hospital and had me admitted. And I'm a wonderful doctor by the name of Katowitz. I'll never forget, put me in traction immediately. I woke up the next morning and my leg just flopped. And I said, my leg doesn't work. He went, no, that does sometimes happen. And I said, am I going to get that back? He said, we'll see. And that was it.
Now, David Mamet is, he's a brilliant playwright, and I love his work. But he is certainly a second thoughts conservative. Now, all these years later, Dwight, that must be very interesting to you, because at the time he was no conservative.
He was
but
not,
you were. You were a conservative from an early age.
I was a conservative.
Tell me briefly about Mamet at the time, and then we'll move on to your earlier life.
Mamet he was just getting married. By the time the Water Engine came to the Public Theater and then it went on to Broadway, David was getting married to Lindsay Krause. Mm-hmm. And you didn't have, being an actor, you didn't have lots of conversations. It was big business against the little guy. That's what the Water Engine was about. And that was the philosophy behind it. And you could have conversations with someone, and you just noticed that there was a liberal ideology here, and behind all of his plays. And you could throw out an idea that was perhaps not so. You would get into a conversation in the play, and a conversation would move on to other things. Back then, it was Jimmy Carter, who was president. And David had a way of smoking his cigar and telling you that you're an ass.
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 Dwight, you're an ass.
And you don't.
What's with the conservatism?
But yeah, it's that sort of thing. And you don't go too far.
Right.
You don't get it too far.
Well, no, because you're working with David Mamet at Joe Papp's Theater.
But let me tell you, when it was because of Israel and talk radio. Mm-hmm. He described it was listening to Dennis Prager, and I'm saying to myself, well, my God, this is a revelation to him. And so many members of the conservative movement today were liberals at one point. Yeah, I don't feel animosity. I feel love, and I'm grateful that they have seen the light. And I understand that he's just written a new play, which hopefully is going to have a conservative bent to it. And his book is wonderful. His book is wonderful. But I embrace him. I'm glad he's come full circle, and welcome.
Now, you've always been a conservative.
Always.
Okay. Early in your life, I would imagine you probably read Whittaker Chambers a lot earlier in life than I did. I'm kind of a second thoughts conservative myself. Tell me, who were some of the early conservative icons quickly?
My mother and father are not conservatives. No one in my family is. But my father watched the news every Sunday morning, and I watched Meet the Press as a small kid. And I remember William Buckley being the first political mind to hit me right between the eyes. He was running for mayor, and he even though he was an intellectual, when he spoke on that he just cut right through the crap. Yep. In fact, he was sitting in the back row. I think there were like 10 people running. He was sitting in the back row, and he got so angry at the fact that nobody would answer questions properly, he stood up and walked over people and left in the middle of the program. And I took note of him, and then I started to read and follow William Buckley. So he's one of the first.
Yeah. Well, he was always had a lot more sense of humor than I think people thought.
Right. And Barry Goldwater too. I have to tell you, he influenced me too.
Okay. Now let's talk because I want to make sure before this first segment ends, we talk about the A Team. This was obviously a career-defining role. So tell me, did you have fun on the A Team? Do you ever see Mr. T? Ever?
No.
Have you seen him since?
No.
Tell me about your A Team experience.
The A Team I was playing Lord Byron in Philadelphia at the time, and I had one day off, and they told me I had to fly to California to audition for this. And my auditions don't usually go well. And so I took my day off, and I flew to California, and I got it. It was a horrible process, but they didn't even want me to go back to my apartment in New York. They wanted to buy out the theater. in Philadelphia.
Really?
Yes. And I said,
Yeah,
no,
this is where you learn theater versus
that's right.
film
I said,
now.
no, you don't
versus
understand.
TV.
I want to play Lord Byron for the end. And I was, just to cut to the quick, they fired me in the middle of the pilot.
Yeah, the AT, they fired you.
They fired me in the middle of the pilot. They said, Dwight, Rod Holcomb came in and said, they, meaning Grant Tinker and Brandon Tartikoff, don't think you're going to make it. You're not going to work out.
So they're writing you out.
So they're going to write me out. They moved me from my cast honey wagon to a honey wagon with the stuntmen. And
which is a nail on the wall to hang
and
your
nobody wanted to touch me because
you're going to be fired.
I'm going to be fired.
So don't go near Dwight.
That's right. Don't go near Dwight.
Plus, he's a conservative.
That's right. He's a conservative. Well, they were conservatives. So I'm lucky. I'm lucky there. And so, but this was typical for my life. I said, it comes, it goes. You just move forward. And then they tested. They were putting things together as they were shooting it, and they tested it. And I tested very well. My dials were really good. So they called my agent and said, we're not firing him. His dials were the best. I didn't know what dials were at the time, but I'm glad they were.
Audience
response. Yes,
How much they like you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. How
your
likability.
Polls.
Yes.
We're talking about polls.
It's all about.
You understand? People like Obamacare. They do. They like gay marriage and homosexuals, and they hate Christ and religion. They hate everything about conservatives. That's what the polls say. And back then, the polls saved me. So, I was written back in, and it was a very successful character.
Very good. Now, very briefly, I know that we have Star Trek, you have a Star Trek gig and everything, but one thing people don't understand, Dwight, and I'm going to finish the segment with this quickly. I did a lot of voiceover work. Right. You have done an immense amount of voiceover work. I don't think people know how difficult it is to craft a career as a voice actor. There are so many people on that line. Just very quickly, tell me about how that's worked out for you.
Well, it started off very slow. Once again, you have to. It's an agent. People have to understand what it is that you can do. I'm not a spokesman. I don't have the deep basso voice that melts women at the television. That's just not.
You can do characters.
I do characters. I do character work. And so the first agent that I had, I went a year and I didn't get a job. And I met a director who said, "Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. I know somebody, Wes Stevens at Vox, and he is really great." And they immediately sent me out for the right thing. And so I started working in animation and in video games.
And here we are.
I mean, it's been a long time, and it really paid the bills.
Oh, and listen, it's a wonderful career, and I'll tell you, if you can do it, you've got some jam. Okay, join us tomorrow night for another segment of the Glazov Gang. Special guest, Dwight Schultz.